Welcome to today's presentation on trauma, biopsychosocial development, and play. I am your host, Melissa Cumming, play therapist in training. I would like to begin by first acknowledging the traditional custodians of all the unceded lands, skies, and waterways on which we come together today. As we work and collaborate, we pay our deep respect to the ancestors and elders of all the lands on which we meet today. Today's presentation will be defined by the following topic question. How does trauma impact on biopsychosocial development and the ability to play? Please take a moment to note the table of contents, which may be helpful when revisiting the slides. In order to unpack and answer our topic question, we must. The Australian Childhood Foundation defined trauma as the emotional, psychological, and physiological residue left over from heightened stress that accompanies experiences of threat, violence, and life-changing events. Trauma can further be defined into two categories: acute, where a child has a single exposure to a traumatic event, and complex, where a child experiences ongoing harm or neglect. It is important to note that trauma can be both first-hand, where events happen directly to the child or a member of their family, or second-hand, where a child experiences trauma indirectly through an account or narrative of the traumatic event, such as a news broadcast. Although there are events, as outlined in the diagram, that can be generalized as traumatic, a child's experience of trauma is individual and impacted by their worldview and past experiences. The diagram shown outlines adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. These ACEs fall into three categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. Researchers have found that the higher number of ACEs a child experiences, their risk for negative health outcomes in adulthood significantly increases. We will now define and explore biopsychosocial development. The biopsychosocial model was defined and shared by George Engel in his 1977 paper, The Need for a New Medical Model, A Challenge for Biomedicine, after recognizing the limitations the biomedical model had by not including psychological and social impacts on health. Engel's model proposed that medical and allied health professionals needed to recognize and integrate the advances in behavioral and social sciences to have a more complete view of a person's overall health and impacts to health. As you can see in the figure shown, this model highlights just how many facets of a person's life contribute to and impact health. As with health, the overall view on child development has changed from a simplistic one-dimensional view to reflect a multifaceted biopsychosocial view, with researchers recognizing biological, environmental, and behavioral factors all contributing to development. A biopsychosocial perspective of development acknowledges that a child's biology, behavior, and social environment are interconnected and therefore altering and impacting one another continually throughout development. When looking at development with a biopsychosocial lens, we are understanding development through the combination of a range of developmental theories. Over the next few slides, I will highlight some of these relevant theories of development. With reference to the biological component of biopsychosocial development, we can note the work of Bruce Perry. Here you can see his hierarchy of brain function. As a child grows and develops, their brain function becomes more complex, moving from functions that keep the infant alive to functions that aid in psychological and social development. This leads us to Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which outlines 4 sequential stages that depict a maturing intelligence and understanding of the world. This theory explains development as the child building a mental model of the world that is based on interactions between their innate capacities and their environment. Erik Erikson's psychosocial stages of development are widely referenced in the field of play therapy. Erikson outlines stages from infancy through to late adulthood and theorized that through these stages, personality is developed. Each stage shows a conflict or crisis of a psychosocial nature, where the psychological needs of the child conflict with the social needs of society. These conflicts can have a positive or negative effect on development. According to research, early childhood trauma is more detrimental than trauma experienced later in life. This is due to the developmental processes that are occurring. This slide outlines the many impacts trauma in childhood can have on development, which can have lasting effects well into adulthood. Research has shown that biological development can be severely disrupted, causing changes and impairments in brain development, which can result in impaired cognition, executive function, and information processing. Impacts to psychological development can create emotional regulation and behavior problems, and an increased risk of depression and anxiety. This may also lead to developmental regression. Impacts to a child's social development can lead to impaired attachment relationships and an inability to make and maintain friendships. They are more likely to be avoidant and engage in risk-taking behaviors. With an understanding of biopsychosocial development, we can now define and explore play development. This image of holistic play development from Renshaw, Parson, and Zimmer shows clearly how a child's biological, psychological, and social developmental stages link with play development throughout childhood. Renshaw and Parsons' work shows a model of play development that references both attachment theory and Sue Jennings' embodiment progression role or EPR model. The first stage of play shown is somatic sensory play. The somatic sensory system detects both mechanical and painful stimuli. Play at this stage is directed by the primary caregiver through light touch, vibration, and pressure. This play builds the child's awareness of their body and could involve tickling, bouncing, being held upright with pressure under feet. The next stage is attachment play, which links to attachment development theory. Here, the caregiver bonds with the baby through the use of activities or games such as singing, rhyme, dancing, games of peekaboo, or hide and seek. The next 3 stages reflect the EPR model and can be linked to Erikson's spheres of play. Starting with embodiment sensory play, this occurs in the autosphere, with the child playing with reference to their own body. Play may involve sitting, crawling, song, waving, rhythm, and repetition, and is often directed or facilitated by the caregiver. Next is small world projective play. Here play occurs in the microsphere, where miniature toys and objects are used to represent real objects and is contained to a play area. Play may involve sand, water, paint, or small toys or puppets, and the child uses these objects to echo stories that may be read or told. Then there is the drama role-play stage. Here play occurs in the macrosphere, which includes the use of full-sized objects and a larger play space, such as the whole house or playground. Play involves enacting and creating stories, characters, and dressing up. The dramatic play is a spontaneous process moving towards a sense of performance by around 7 years of age. The final stage, shown on Renshaw and Parsons' model, is play integration. This is when a child's play becomes integrated in their daily lives. This may look and be referred to as passions or hobbies for older children as they move towards adulthood. Now that we have unpacked the definitions of trauma, biopsychosocial development, and play development, we can return to our topic question to explore how trauma impacts a child's ability to play. In order to understand the impact trauma has on a child's ability to play, we must first understand the positive impact play has on health and development. This graphic displayed is a representation of Charles Schaefer's therapeutic powers of play. These 20 core agents of change highlight the positive effects play has on a child's development. They have been categorized into 4 key areas: facilitates communication, fosters emotional wellness, enhances social relationships, and increases personal strengths. Yogman et al. State that play is not frivolous and not just about having fun. It enhances brain structure and function and gives children opportunities to take risks, experiment, and learn skills such as problem solving, collaboration, and creativity. Therefore, play can be said to be a protective factor that positively impacts health and development. Play is a critical element across all components of biopsychosocial development. When trauma occurs during this period, it can have serious, widespread, and long-lasting effects on development. When a child's biological development is impacted by trauma, it can cause physical impairments which affect a child's cognitive and executive functions. Due to this change in development, an incongruence between biological age and stage of development can occur. This affects the child's ability to play as they are not reaching the play milestones in line with their peers. A child's cognitive understanding of their world is a critical part of psychological development. When trauma occurs during this time, a child's ability to play is impacted as their capacity to understand and interpret interactions of play has been impaired. Finally, the impact of trauma on social development can significantly change a child's attachment relationships, leading to avoidance and difficulty forming secure attachments and relationships throughout childhood. Without secure attachments, a child's ability to play is impaired as they are unable to connect with their caregiver or peers. Thank you for your time today. This concludes my presentation on trauma, biopsychosocial development, and play. Please pause the video on the next slide to take note of the references used to inform this presentation.